Good morning. It's Friday, August 28th, and this is World Watch. Hurricane Laura hit the Gulf Coast late Wednesday into early Thursday morning, bringing winds reaching 150 miles per hour and heavy rain. But the destruction is proving less extensive than many feared. We can expect to see damage to infrastructure, downed power lines and trees, and flooded buildings from rising water levels called storm surges. One financial and property data company estimated that more than 430,000 homes were at risk of flooding, estimating reconstruction cost could reach $88.6 billion. But for those of us not living in the Gulf impact zone, Texas and Louisiana, you might be surprised to know this storm affects you too, or rather your gas tank. About half of the United States refineries sit along the Gulf Coast in low-lying regions, and half of these fell within Laura's projected path, causing gas prices to rise in anticipation. Historically, intense weather can damage the nation's critical oil and gas pipelines, causing supply disruptions by inhibiting offshore crude production and delivery. But due to COVID-19, transportation fuel isn't in high demand and energy markets are sitting on a comfortable supply. All around the storm was less severe than reports first led us to believe, but damaging winds and flooding remain a concern until it pushes off the eastern coast over the weekend. And after the break, we'll take a look at how hurricanes like Laura form. After 160 days of locked doors, its longest peacetime closure on record, the British Museum in London welcomed people back yesterday. And it turns out many of the exhibits, like this ivory chess set from Scotland, missed visitors too. When people breathe, it changes the moisture in the air. Delicate artifacts made from organic materials are highly susceptible to their environment.
If things become very moist at 70% humidity, they become mouldy, or mould can grow on them. If they go below 30%, then they begin to crack.
Not all of the museum's treasures are open for viewing, but visitors following pre-booking guidelines and one-way arrows will still be able to see over 9,000 artifacts. But many museums will not even undergo a partial reopening. A recent survey of some 750 museum directors shows 1/3 of all U.S. museums could close permanently. Botanical gardens or zoos with outdoor attractions are surviving, while those with indoor interactive experiences like science centers and children's museums struggle. The museum industry contributes about $50 billion to the economy yearly and provides some 750,000 jobs. The U.S. Postal Service has a lot of political headaches right now, but in the midst of that, they've issued a stamp of gratitude. This is the newest Forever stamp. The phrase, "Thank you," is lettered in cursive by artist Dana Tanamachi, and it's ornamented with flowers and printed in gold foil. Now, before Forever stamps, each first-class stamp had a value, say 39 cents, and the post office would frequently increase the cost of first-class postage. So, if you tried to use a 39-cent stamp, but the price of postage had increased to 41 cents, well, you'd have to go out and buy a bunch of 2-cent stamps so that you could use up your old 39-cent stamps. Well, the cost of Forever stamps might increase, but once you buy them, they will always get your letter delivered. That's one more thing to be thankful for. We've all seen a public restroom, but maybe not this public. You can see right through the walls. But watch, once you lock the door, the walls turn opaque. They're made of smart glass. The restrooms are part of the Tokyo Toilet Project, an initiative to reinvent public toilets as cleaner and safer facilities.
It's really cool, but I felt uneasy using it. It's clean, too.
World Watch News is sponsored by The World and Everything in It. Daily news and analysis wherever you get your podcasts.
So we've looked at the aftermath of a hurricane, but what causes such a big storm? Atlantic hurricanes start over Africa's Sahara Desert. The sun beats down on the Sahara and warms up the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, disturbing the atmosphere over the Sahara. Westward winds move the unstable weather toward the coast, And as the sun continues to warm the earth, moisture rises up from the land, plants, and water into the air. As that warm, wet air rises, it cools down and creates condensation. Those are the tiny water droplets that make up storm clouds. A cluster of storms gather. Most storms die when they float over the cool coastal waters, but some are carried out into the warmer ocean, which causes them to grow. We know that hot air rises, right? So as the warm, wet air moves upward, it leaves behind an area of low pressure. Cool air rushes in to fill that space, and that exchange of air is the wind that we feel during a storm. Now, don't forget that the Earth is rotating all the time. That makes the warm air spiral as it rises, and the cluster of storms begins to turn. As it turns, bands of wind and rain whip faster and faster. But at the center of the storm, called the eye, it's completely calm. Finally, trade winds blow the hurricane ashore. Hurricanes can hit really hard, but thankfully they weaken pretty quickly as they start to move over the land. Hurricanes do a lot of damage, but they also bring rain to dry areas and warm air to cooler places. Hurricanes also stir up the ocean, which balances the water temperature and brings nutrients up from the seafloor.
57 million K-12 students are returning to classes one way or the other, maybe online, maybe in person. But for many students, it's to prepare for a specific dream job. Sarah Schweinsberg introduces us to a young woman who found out God's plan doesn't always look like our plan.
Oh, hey there. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know someone who does. Come with me.
Ainsley Porchak is an international award-winning fiddler. But getting here was a journey. As a little girl, Porchak fell in love with the fiddle.
When I went to hold it, it was so much lighter than I imagined it, and it was more delicate, and oh boy, there were 4 strings, and oh, there's a bow. How in the world do I do this and not make a horrible sound?
Stopping those horrible sounds took practice, and more practice, and more practice. She wanted to be a professional musician.
That was my goal. That was the one thing I wanted to achieve.
But in high school, her hands got tired. She worked so hard, she tore a tendon in her pinky finger.
I felt like there was a rubber band that somebody had just taken a pair of scissors to and just snap. It was terrible.
She couldn't play for months and didn't know if she'd ever play again.
What else will I do? There was a lot of sadness and a lot of questioning.
She turned to prayer and Bible reading, and in that, learned to trust in God's plan for her.
If that door closed, God was going to open a window.
After 6 months, her finger did heal, and she got right back to it.
But it felt so good to be back playing again. It was so wonderful. I think I cried. I probably cried.
10 years later, she's still fiddling away with her band, Carolina Blue, and her fiancé, who plays the banjo. Porchak says she's learned that God's plans are going to be bigger and probably different than hers. And that's a good thing.
I never could have imagined where I am now. So be patient, be steadfast, and God has a plan for you.
Meet the members of the Italian School of Rescue Dogs. These dogs do important work. They're lifeguards. 400 of them and their trainers work all over the country of Italy.
Our relationship is very important because it is a relationship based on trust, on a connection, and through the love of your dog.
The canines spend a year in training where they learn to swim to someone in distress and pull them safely to shore. These Labradors and Golden Retrievers save between 30 and 40 lives every year. Look out, New York. There's a new King Kong in town. King Nyani is a 4.5-ton bronze gorilla statue taking up residence for 9 months in a Manhattan park.
He came all the way to New York City from Australia. He's friendly, he's welcoming. He has his arms wide open for you to sit in.
Australian artist Gilly and Mark Shatner created the sculpture to bring awareness to endangered animals and to bring happiness to New Yorkers. Friendly or not, I'm not sure I want to come across this guy on an evening walk in the park. And thanks for watching, everybody. I'm the Big Bash. Remember, whatever the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand. We'll see you tomorrow.